The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel. It's nice to see everyone, be with you again. We are a little bit north of Iowa City. We being me, Junior, and the ball team. We have a morning baseball outing again so far. The teams played well. They beat a pretty famous high-level tryout heavy Omaha-based team yesterday in a thriller. And it was awesome. Super proud of the kids.
Why don't you want to call them out by name? Pacesetter?
Because, no, it wasn't the Pacesetters. It wasn't the throwback. Who among us didn't get our heads smashed in by the Gladiators at one point in our youth career? It wasn't the Gladiators. You could maybe do some math on it, and it's a collection of kids from Omaha, Lincoln, and some of the surrounding areas that play great baseball. And it's hard to make their squads. And they get a lot of college coaches.
Oh, like the prospects? Yeah, the prospects or something.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
It was really hard fought, 8-6 win yesterday by the kids.
Well, they weren't throwing their best pitcher, dude. They were just trying to get some guy that normally doesn't throw a few innings. That's always that's one thing I love about select baseball too. Like you go before a game, coaches meet up, and just to hedge against the fact that they might get their ass kicked, they're like, "Yeah, we're just throwing some kids that need some innings. You know, we had been a real grind lately, so we're just gonna throw a few kids that they have."
I loved watching I loved watching the two coaches against the team we beat, where they're in the first base and third base box, so they're outside the dugout when they're in the field playing defense. And, I mean, just the mannerisms. And these guys are yoked. They're probably Ironmen, all right, when it comes to being able to run, swim, and exist. They're they're
good at existing.
Right. And,
you guys are really good at existing.
They're bending down. Yeah. They're playing with the grass. They're crouched like they're catching. The hats come off. The mannerisms, how demonstrative they are. They're flipping their hair back. I mean, it's game 7 every pitch. I absolutely love it. And then one bounces twice the plate. It's ball forward. You walk or run in. You see the head shake, and then one of the coaches goes back into the dugout and absolutely probably lights up everyone on the bench.
Because they know they're going to hear about it from the parents, too. That's the thing.
Oh, we didn't see it.
They know they're going to hear about it.
We didn't see the other team we beat yesterday exit the dugout. I mean, I was envisioning.
They were summarily executed.
Well, either that or they were lining up on the left foul pole and they were going to run the right foul pole, and it was the Kurt Russell scene out of Miracle again. I mean, they're just going to be running all night into the rain. But good work by Southwest JV team, man. Proud of them. It was great. And awesome team effort, some clutch hitting, and pretty good bounce back. The first game we played yesterday was not good. Junior came in, and at one point they were already in the run rule gray area. All right. Junior made sure they got run ruled. So it was a little
good.
Rough.
Hey, yeah. Again, saving pitching for the rest of the tournament. He's contributing to that.
Getting out of here after 3 innings, baby.
He's going to fall on that sword for the team,
He was getting ticked off. He buzzed one too many towers. But let's get into a little football here. Brandon Vogel's with us in about 10 minutes. We'll check in with the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. Guys, we're 3 weeks from Big Ten Media Days, and then an accelerated start to the season, the end of July. Nebraska is going to get back at it here next week with the kids coming back, a little bit of a 4th of July break. Sent you guys Bill Conley's Big Ten West breakdown, and I love how he titled this about the Big Ten West, because it is the last rodeo, the last hurrah of the Big Ten West, and he called it the old reliable, where offense doesn't mean anything. It is about defense. It's about field position. It's about how well you can run the football because of the physical nature of the Big Ten West, and it's the last of its kind, really. Now, as an identity and as a team, you're going to do what you do well, and that's play defense, run the football, and make it a death march for 4 quarters. That won't leave some of the teams in the Big Ten. I mean, that's still going to be Iowa's brand of football. It's going to be Nebraska's brand of football under Coach Rule. It'll be maybe a little bit more aerial in Wisconsin with Luke Fickell. He's not going to abandon the strengths they have with 18 starters back, but as they get more comfortable, they're going to be morphing more into 4 or 5 or 3 wide receiver sets versus I formation, double tight downhill. Now under Fickell, they'll still be able to do that. But yeah, it was pretty interesting to see how things were projected and predicted. Agree with Conley that Illinois was the best team last year. Agree that Purdue had the best November. That's why they went to the Big Ten championship game. Iowa had it right there. You had a tough start for Wisconsin in league play. Minnesota's always been pretty talented. A lot of build-up and some talk, guys, about that opener with Nebraska and Minnesota, how it is it's always a tone setter to start the season, but it's an absolute tone setter for where things go with Nebraska.
You realize you said tone setter right when the waffle tones started going off?
I need to
that was amazing.
To talk to the front desk here, so you guys carry on for a moment.
Yeah. Dude, did you notice that? He summoned it. He said tone setter, and at the exact same time, I believe that's when the waffle pancake timer thing, that's the sound it makes when it's done.
Well, I thought whenever he said I'm going to step away, I thought that was going to mean his waffle was ready, but unfortunately,
I know. So I think he's telling him, hey, can we go ahead and unplug that waffle maker? It's
no, I was being asked to move, and I was like I couldn't do it because of the lighting. So
Schmidt wins that argument.
You're
I'm good.
The lobby.
Well, this is kind of the breakfast bar area, but there's two people.
There's people that are just listening to the podcast.
The breakfast bar.
Yeah, we got to set the tone. We got to set the stage here for the people that are just listening right now. All right, so you got me at my home studio. You got Elijah at the actual studio. You got Chris, presumably at a Days Inn, Holiday Inn. I don't know. It's a hotel lobby.
We're not that good.
No free shout-outs. No free shout-outs.
Super 8?
No free shout-outs. No lawsuits.
Okay, the Marion Roadway Inn. That's where Schmidt is right now. He's in a lobby. Behind him, you can see 3 to 4 people, having their kind of like powdered, reconstituted egg breakfast.
I've not tried it. I'm sure it's very delicious.
Chris is sipping on coffee, and then right in the middle of it, so you're like in the lobby, basically. Like people are checking in and they're greeted by you.
Right, and a couple of dads from other baseball organizations walked by and thumbs up to us, so we're okay.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Yeah. But so the person at the desk, late 20s, probably, late, early 50s.
I can't give you a number.
Okay, that's tough. Okay, so that's what you're doing, and a little grumpy. Maybe he's been working overnight.
Yeah, but very, very kind. Very kind with the request.
Okay.
That means they're right next to him.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think there may have been a retreat for a smoke break. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's important. It's almost 8.
Yeah.
You got to get that cracking.
I said we're out in 35 minutes, so it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, welcome back. Glad that they're keeping you in the lobby, and Where were you? So the Big Ten West, a freaking
Big Ten
awesome
West.
Division, right? Is that
Yes.
where we're
One last hurrah with the West.
Did they have to adjust their system for us? Is that what happened?
I don't know. The question that's posed, and I haven't even gone here yet for Nebraska because I'm not really – I just want to see how year one starts and finishes, right? I want to see how much Nebraska improves or how much Nebraska and Rule get used to one another. I mean, I think the plan is sound. I think the blueprint is sound with how it could work and how it's supposed to work. It's about the execution part of it for Nebraska. But the question here is, how long will it take Matt Rule in Nebraska? There's been so many previews over so many years with Nebraska in the West. It's really jarring where the program's at and how the balance of power has shifted and where the program has gone in 30 years. This is part of Conley's write-up on Nebraska. And quite honestly, Nebraska is an afterthought right now. And they're never an afterthought to Nebraska fans. They're never an afterthought to Nebraska, the state. But on a national scale, and guys, even in the Big Ten West, you just wonder because there was so much stock bought in Coach Frost and getting it and being able to turn it around. And right now there's some hesitancy, and I get it. There's some wait and see. And there's even some wait and see with Nebraska fans when it comes to their investment going to Boulder, their investment going to Minneapolis. And you just wonder, how long could it be? Is it a 3-year build? Is it a 2-year? Do you come out in year one and do well? I mean, Nebraska did well in recruiting in short turnaround time. That first class for Rule, it did really well in the portal when you look at how it shook out. And you look at the hires, and this is what Conley highlighted. One, the coordinators are exciting to talk about, but you have Satterfield and White, what their offense and defenses have averaged. They aren't lighting the world on fire. They're good. They're steady. And the non-conference is also looked at. A fast start is what could get Nebraska to 6-6. But the final notes in this are what's cautionary. The marriage seems to have plenty of potential, and I assume it will succeed, just like I assume Scott Frost would succeed. And that's very telling. The assumption that it's going to work, the hope that it's going to work, but it was supposed to work last time. It was supposed to work following Bo. It was supposed to work with Bo, and I think it was working with Bo. It was supposed to work with Bill Callahan. Well, it was supposed to work with Frank Solch. We've gone through this for 20 years, we being Nebraska and the fan base and folks who've covered it. So it's been interesting to see, but they've got Nebraska pegged 5th. I know that hurts some Nebraska fans, but you just haven't had the consistency, guys, to say, okay, their talent level or coaching or the combination of both or the schedule, right, is top 3 in the Big Ten. Some years, yes, but the way they've played and been unable to finish out, I mean, all right, 5th is what it is. I mean, only team below them right now is Northwestern, and that's who tagged them last year. And Elijah, you spent a lot of time yesterday on Pat Fitzgerald and how he's got a 2-week suspension without pay. I mean, the end looks near for him unless he gets to a bowl game. And I hate saying that. I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not true, because I think Pat Fitzgerald's a great coach and shouldn't be done dirty by a program he has took to new heights despite some issues. Michael checks in, cautiously optimistic, most concerned about Satterfield, his offense. I lived in Columbia the past 2 years, and Satterfield fans were few and far between. I know he got some heat at South Carolina, but, man, the world loved him, guys, as soon as he took down the way he finished the year as Clemson, who got beat by South Carolina. They put up 60 on Tennessee, and then they almost beat Notre Dame in the bowl game. So those who didn't like Satterfield surely loved the guy the last 3 games of the season. and he was able to bring in a pretty elite quarterback.
Well, and I think part of it too is like, you can call him elite, but I think Rattler is definitely a polarizing guy too.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how I'd feel.
when I say elite, I say from a talent, like an arm talent standpoint, he's pretty damn good.
No, 100%. But what I'm saying is I think
Personality,
Satterfield caught some shrapnel that was directed at Rattler, I bet too. Right? It's just he's not an easy guy to like. As even if he was at Nebraska, and I'm a big fan of, I of course that's the quarterback, I guess, but privately I'd be like, God, I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy. And then Satterfield by association, I think, just gets a little crap for it too. And look, when you're an offensive coordinator, with the exception of last year with Whipple, where he just decided to take over the room and do whatever the hell he wanted, for the most part, you exist at the pleasure of the head coach, and you are supposed to execute the offense that you're being asked to execute, and it's going to be based on your personnel, right? So I don't think Satterfield, if you go throughout his entire history, is a guy that chucks it 50 times a game. It's his entire history. At South Carolina, they did. They threw it a lot more because they had Spencer Rattler, and it's probably what he was asked to do. Later in the year, it kind of worked out. I feel like, in general, coordinators get probably almost like quarterbacks, too much blame, too much credit in some ways. I think probably 60 to 70% of all coordinators are fine and good at their jobs, and then you get a few on the edges. You get a few that are just terrible and a few that are amazing, but most are they're good. They're fine, and you can win with them. And I at the end of the day, I think that's what Nebraska. I don't know that Nebraska's tried the savant route a couple times now, right? Callahan fancied himself a savant. Bo was a savant on defense, and gives up record rushing yards on national TV to Melvin Gordon, 400 plus. Like, a defensive savant doesn't do that. So the
you did it twice. You did it in 2014 and you did it in 2012. And
then 70 out by Wisconsin in the Big Ten.
That's what I'm saying. That's the second time.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Just some cataclysmically, historically bad defensive coordinator performances, when coming in, his reputation and his history was that of a savant, that of an amazing, oh my God, this guy can get it. Callahan kind of had a similar vibe with offense and his NFL prowess. Frost, of course, had that, right? Frost was the offensive genius. God, did you see what he did at Oregon? Oh my God. You see how they practice? It's amazing. Oh my God, he's played. God, some of those wrinkles that he has on what are, typical option plays. He's reinvented all that stuff. All those folks, the savants, have failed spectacularly, right? And it's just in record fashion, And so you've also been turning the ball over a ton, right? More so than anybody else in the Big Ten. So I'm actually kind of rooting for boring. I hope it is kind of boring and Nebraska just stops. Good teams don't turn I'm not breaking new ground here, but just start doing the things that good teams do, right? Good teams just don't turn it over. They don't do that. They just don't do it. Well, they don't do it, right? It's let's start there. Let's stabilize that. Let's have a reasonable amount of turnovers, and I don't care what the hell offense you run.
Well, yeah, Mark, whenever you think about the Big Ten West as a whole, the Big Ten West isn't a division that savant nature, offensive coordinator, super creative is required. And you've seen it a little bit from Purdue in their passing game in recent years. They found success there. But generally, when you look at the Big Ten West, it comes down to playing clean football, as you said, no turnovers, no penalties, winning the lines of scrimmage, and then getting it done in the fourth quarter, which I've boiled it down pretty simply there. But those are the things that the teams that go and find success and go make a Big Ten title, at least from the Big Ten West, do. And I don't look too far ahead to divisionless football, but whenever you look at the Big Ten West, especially the Big Ten West next season, people are mad about Connolly and Phil Steele and all the who's who of college football media picking Nebraska 4th, 5th in the Big Ten West. We're at the point where, why would you pick Nebraska higher than that? You're wait and see mode. Everyone's seen the last 10 years. Everyone's gotten killed in the postseason whenever they say, why'd you pick Nebraska to win the Big Ten West? And they go 3-9. they're tired of it. They're in wait-and-see mode with Nebraska. And simply put, what Nebraska needs next season to go win some football games, go get back to a place where they're closer to national relevancy, isn't some savant offensive coordinator, some well-liked offensive coordinator that's going to go pick up 600 yards of offense for you next season. I mean, on BTN a couple nights ago, they had that Nebraska Northwestern Hail Mary game. Yep, I was sitting there watching it, and I was going,
me too.
Man, I remember being frustrated with this like third down play calling. Oh, it's 3rd and 6. We're running a fade route from the 40-yard line. Like, what are we doing? It's not like the super creative play callers that go win the day in the Big Ten West. It's the guys that run the ball, get you to 2nd and manageable, 3rd and short, make it easy for yourselves. And where does that start? It's playing clean football, avoiding penalties, controlling the lines of scrimmage, making sure you can get 3 or 4 yards of pop on your rushing downs. And then guess what? Give yourself a fighting chance in the fourth quarter. You're going to give yourself a chance to win that football game. And the teams that win the fourth quarter are the teams that go play in the Big Ten championship game every single season. Look at Purdue whenever you compare them to Illinois last season. They found a way to get it done in the fourth quarter in a lot of games last season. They're playing in Indianapolis. That's what it takes to win in the Big Ten West. And Nebraska hasn't proven they can do any of those things over the past 5 years. And Matt Rule sure as hell hasn't proven he can do it at Nebraska. So they're going to be in wait-and-see mode too.
You got to hit your 40-yard field goals, and you got to, get the occasional 50-yard punts and not shank them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it almost sounds like we're being coach cliche here. It sounds like right. It sounds coach cliche here, but it's little things, right? It's little things. And Frost would talk about that. He would talk about the little things. He didn't have a program that created an environment that led to doing little things well. He just didn't, right? Hey, I think he had the right idea. We could all do that. Like, use this analogy. Like, I want to dunk. I'm 5'8", though. And I'm 45, and I'm a little overweight. It ain't happening. I could want it all I want, right? But do you have the actual skills and the actual capabilities to do it? And things like that are in Nebraska's control. Things like not jumping off sides, Nebraska's control. Things like you're going to have some turnovers. It's an oblong football, and there's giant men strafing at it. Like, you're going to have some. But the amount that Nebraska had, that's controllable. It's absolutely controllable. Recruiting a kicker that can put it through from 40, you can do that. So like the things that have been ailing Nebraska are not. It's so easy to just get all deep on like, oh God, it's the glory days of the past. They cannot rediscover those, and the times have changed, and Nebraska's will never be able to regain the glory that they. Dude, no. Get a good kicker that can kick it 40. Get a quarterback that doesn't turn it over. Run the ball pretty well. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not. These aren't acts of God that you have to do, right? They're not.
You got to be able to do the mundane stuff. You've got to do
and that's coaching.
The fundamentals. Just do the fundamentals right 85% of the time, and let someone else screw it up. Right? That was kind of the game plan for a few years, the last 5 years. You've tried the big brain. Now just go with the brawn. Go with the boring. Go with the easy. Go with the rehearsed. Go with you've done this drill 38 times, but guess what? Ball security matters. or to your point, Elijah, yeah, it wasn't rocket science. We're going to get 5 on first, 3 on second, and just wear you out on 3rd and short because you're not going to stop it.
Hey, you'll see Brandon's note, by the way?
No, I did not.
Okay, he's just looking for the link here.
Well, he's got it. Look at that. Look at that.
Hey,
there he is.
Vogues, how are we, bud?
Not too bad. How are you guys?
Good.
I was just about to get you the link. I was like, "Did you guys see his note? He needs the link."
I sent Vogues wants/needs link at I think 7:55 or 58-ish. So,
Yeah.
So the good news is, if I get tased and removed, there's 3 of you to carry on.
That would be so
can we
fun. No offense to you, Schmidt, but like, we might go viral. The radio show where the one guy's getting kicked out, pulled out by police officers out the front door. We're trying to do a radio show. That could be big for our show.
Chris is causing a ruckus in a Marion, Iowa roadway in.
It's not a roadway.
Roadway Inn lobby right now.
So I was there. There's a conference room in back down the hall, and I had set up there originally, and I guess the way to put it is the lighting was not great. Not that I'm a beautiful man or anything. And then there's a back room area, but there really wasn't any plugins, and lighting was. So I'm at the breakfast bar, Vogues. There's not a large crowd. I don't think anyone's uncomfortable. There's been no food, no bananas thrown at me. So that's good.
Speaking of great lighting, how about Brandon, who is clearly getting
always has the football office going.
No, but he's got the light that's just it's like,
is it the window, or do you have one of those little rings behind you?
It's gracefully
this is
filtering in.
Yeah, this is all natural lighting. I've got the blinds slightly pulled, so it's like I'm in a noir film in that you've got the shadows on the face. So for those of you not watching on the stream, that's what you're missing.
Oh, you
got these subtle striations from the blinds. It's good, man. It's really good.
So Vogues, we're talking about Bill Conley. His write-up is the old reliable, one last hurrah for the Big Ten West. And it's pretty interesting to see his synopsis on all the teams, the what if with Wisconsin, how they've kind of gone the Bob Stoops, Mike Leach route. Hated going against your offense, so I'm going to hire you, and this is the offense we're going to use. Kind of reminds me also of where Tim Beck landed or has landed after his time with Nebraska, how he was right there at Ohio State because his offenses would routinely put up about 35 to 40 early on in the Big Ten against about everybody. I mean, think about D'Antonio and those, that Sparty'd allow 8 points a game, and then here comes Nebraska to drop a 35 with a quarterback that drove you nuts. Iowa, they're going to be better, presumably, on offense with the Michigan influx, but defense won't be as elite, but they'll be damn good again. And then there's Minnesota, and they get quarterback play. You get down to Nebraska, and the Huskers are fifth and probably headed bowling because why wouldn't you if you get your bleep together? There's 6 wins on the schedule. I want to get your take on Conley's outlook, the old reliable. One last preseason write-up on the West, but also, folks, I want to get your take on Northwestern, and do you think there's some writing now on the wall for Pat Fitzgerald in lieu of the suspension? Start there for me.
Yeah, so saw the news first on Twitter, which is usually not the best place to actually know what's happening, and I think like most people probably was like a little bit shocked. Northwestern's in an interesting spot, and that we all think, or I think a lot of people think, this is certainly what I think, that, Pat Fitzgerald, like, how do you move on from that if you're Northwestern? I mean, they've won one conference game in 3 of the past 4 seasons, and it's still like, but are you gonna upgrade? What do you do? It's just we see these situations in college football all the time, but Northwestern's a little unique for a bunch of reasons, in that hadn't had a ton of success in the past. It's also a school that isn't, by nature of its admissions, isn't that all that active in its transfer portal because it's hard to be. It's unique in a lot of regards. So I did have a moment where I wondered, I'm like, well, I guess if we look at this and be like, well, how do you move on from Pat Fitzgerald? Something like this is maybe the crack that, starts to creep up the foundation a little bit. Reading into the situation, it maybe wasn't as severe. I'm not trying to minimize it by any means, but maybe wasn't as severe as the first couple of tweets I read made it sound. So I think we'll see. I think ultimately it'll come down to what happens on the field play, and Northwestern hasn't been good of late, minus that 2020 run where they were great to the Big Ten title game, and a weird season for everybody. So they've got to get better on the field. I think that's ultimately still what it comes down to, even with yesterday's news on that front.
Yeah. And then overall, when you look at the makeup of the Big Ten West, and this is going to be the last of it, the last hurrah. And now that we say that out loud, it's there's a little nostalgia there where you're like, because that was maybe the closest approximation to the Big Eight. That I mean,
this
really,
is pretty good. We gotta put this in here.
Is calling an onside kick up by 11 hazing?
For Northwestern, it was the opposite of hazing. For Nebraska, it may have qualified.
Dude. Oh, man, there's a lot in there. Put Jack Stark on that case. Like, what does that signify? But the Big Ten West being its last hurrah here, and, you know, I don't think there is a ton of difference in the Big Ten West between the last place team and the first place team. There just isn't, right? It's really subtle things. It's who can control the clock, who doesn't turn it over, who's maybe got a kicker that can hit from 50 instead of 40. It's, you know, the margins are pretty thin there. But that said, as you've done your reviews too, and after seeing what Bill Connolly says, who has, you know, formulas at his disposal that lead to some pretty good accuracy, anything you agree or disagree strongly with that Bill came out with in terms of how things are stacked and who's the fave?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think from a pure like power rating standpoint, which is kind of the basis for this, there's a whole lot to disagree with on that front. And I do feel a little wistful, I guess, for the last season of our, you know, big ugly tussle that is the Big Ten West, where you're right, there's not a lot of difference between last place and first place. In fact, it's probably which team goes 4-2 in one score games and which team goes 2-4, like, really. And we know where Nebraska has been on that spectrum of late, historically at the bottom, to a historic level, I guess I mean. But, you know, whether it's SP Plus, Bill Connolly's metric, or FPI, or, you know, just some of the more like conventional previews like at Athlon or something, the one where I might end up a little bit lower than kind of what seems to be the consensus is Iowa. I mean, there's a whole weird thing of everybody knows they need to score 325 points. In fact, it's mentioned in Connolly's preview. It's mentioned in our yearbook in the preview I wrote about Iowa. It'll probably be mentioned in every preview. It's an interesting way to do that. And like Cade McNamara is obviously an upgrade for them at quarterback, but he lost that job to a more dynamic guy at Michigan, and he doesn't have Michigan skill talent at Iowa. And Iowa's offensive line has a ton of questions to answer after the past 2 years. Defensively, they lose a lot. Defensively, they're going to be fine, and that's the thing you can bank on with Iowa. So that's one where like, I'm not predicting them to fall off a cliff by any means, but I look at it, and they usually end up second in most of these Big Ten West previews, and I'm like, I don't know. I might like Minnesota a little bit more, actually. And I do think Wisconsin's a deserving favorite. Purdue will be edged. I think Purdue made a pretty good hire. It's a big change, obviously, going from what Braum did to Ryan Walter's specialty. And they got a pretty tough schedule. So I think in Connolly's SP Plus, like Purdue's slightly ahead of Nebraska, but over 12 games, so including non-conference, their win total is actually under 6, and Nebraska's is right over. So, and that's really where you get to. Illinois is kind of the wild card team in this. Obviously, lost that defensive coordinator to Purdue, and lost a ridiculously talented secondary, which I think is the biggest question with them. Not to mention on offense losing Chase Brown. So Illinois is a bit of a wild card. Northwestern's a bit of a wild card. So it's a Big Ten West again. I'm glad we're not getting an out of the norm season in the last season of this beautiful ugly division.
And Brandon, whenever you say it's the Big Ten West, like it's going to be up for grabs. What I think of when I think of the Big Ten West is that it's going to get weird nature. You never know what's going to happen. And I want to, like, as we're kind of putting the nail in the coffin of the Big Ten West this season, do you have any moments from Husker history over the past 10-ish years of the Big Ten West that kind of defines Big Ten West football to you playing in the Big Ten West? What's that memory that's going to stand out whenever you look back in 10, 15 years of Nebraska's time in this division? What's that one or two defining memories of, yeah, it's the Big Ten West for you?
I don't know if there's one or two, because there are so many that I think defined, for me, Nebraska's inability to fit in West specifically, but kind of the Big Ten as a whole, of like, you know, Nebraska comes with a lot of history, and it's history to be proud of. And making the transition from any conference to the Big Ten, I think specifically, is difficult. But that entire time, basically since 2011, and there were some bright spots, you know, in the Pelini years specifically. Riley had one. was just Nebraska's inability to kind of like understand, I think, the terms of engagement now of like, hey, this isn't sexy. It's not fun a lot of the time. You got to do like the ugly, dirty work. And Nebraska just couldn't get there. So really choose, and I'm even beyond Frost, like choose some of the losses that Nebraska had. And I'm not trying to be negative with it, but that's really what it defines. What defines Nebraska's time in this division specifically for me. It was like, you're right there and you just kind of could never get over it. You would never just do the like small, simple thing, which Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwestern are all programs that have kind of dominated the division for as long as it's existed for the most part by doing those things. And Minnesota got really, really close. I mean, this all sounds really bleak. So if we want a happier potential memory, I think, the best it probably was for Nebraska in this division was the 2012 year where they went on that winning streak after some kind of early, what I would call straight from central casting Bo Pelini losses in that season. Like they went through this beautiful, ugly Big Ten West. That's the term that I'm using. And it seems to be, and won, I think 6 games in a row to make it the conference championship game. And then the season was over. I don't think anything happened after that.
Oh, we got Chris on mute, I think,
Chris,
sir.
it says Chris chose to mute himself.
There we go.
Sorry. After the Ohio State
That's
game,
how that 2012 season ended. Exactly.
after that Ohio State game, though, he pretty much declared we got to win out.
Yeah.
And then they go win these last 30-second clutch ball games where they get a stop and a missed field goal against Northwestern. They find, the kid who wanted to play quarterback that played wideout against Michigan, not Tariq Allen. Jamal Turner, thank you. Found Jamal in the end zone. And
I almost took my knees out on that play. I was at that.
You were there. Yes, you were there. And D'Antonio again wanted a voodoo doll.
Hey,
but
can I
it's been crazy.
I have to fact check Brandon in a loving way, which I think just illustrates what we've been saying this whole time. Just kind of how unremarkable the Big Ten West is kind of year to year. So you call out 2012, that was legends and leaders. There was no Big Ten West.
There we go.
So there is no discernible, definable, memorable Big Ten West moment. Well, you would have to probably pick out some sort of like random 3rd and 8 in the third quarter that kept
it was Iowa. It was Iowa, Illinois last year in that 9-6 ball game. Where offense was bad.
I mean, if we're going bleak, then like the defining memory.
We're gonna have such fond memories of a division that really created no memories.
Like if we're going bleak though, like the memory then that stands out to me, if you count out that 2012 season's probably Duncan doing the arm circles on Memorial Stadium's field whenever Nebraska blows it in the fourth quarter. That now becomes my defining memory of the Big Ten West. It's, Nebraska couldn't get done in the fourth quarter and the opponent celebrating on the home stadium as Nebraska fans go home sad.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, I mean, so I guess maybe we're all wrong. We won't remember the Big Ten West because I had not thought about leaders and legends in a long time. But that is correct. So that makes this. In the time that the West Division existed, Nebraska had 2 winning records. 2014, Bo Pelini gets fired, and then 2016, which was like smoke and mirrors. Every other season in the Big Ten West was a losing season.
Wow. That is really crazy when you hear that. Out of what? It was 10 years of the Big Ten West then? 10 seasons, 2 winning seasons out of 10? Oh my God. I think we all just kind of spent a couple seconds there just saying, what are we doing here? At 8:26 in the morning, who are we even talking about here? So hold on. Nebraska's had losing – I have not heard it put in that way. Like I've heard – you know what I mean? I've heard Nebraska has not they haven't been to a bowl game in 6 years, or they have 6 straight losing – I have not heard only 2 winning seasons in the last 10.
So actually 9. So 2023 will be the 10th season, 10th anniversary.
Yeah,
the beautiful, ugly West.
But so 2 winning seasons out of 9.
And they're 0-9 in Big Ten title games. As we pour a little more salt in the wound, the average loss in that game was by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I mean going back to that,
West,
2020, the transition to the West, like kind of similar to the Big 12 North, like I think you had to look at that. If you're a fan of any team in the West, and be like, well, this is good. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are all over there. Not to mention Michigan State, which was, still at kind of the heights of the D'Antonio era there. So if you would have said then in 2014, like, here comes the Big Ten West, Nebraska's going to have 2 winning seasons in the next 9.
Jeez.
Boy.
Wow. Yeah, honestly, I literally have not heard it put. Have you? Like, I think you just sort of brought that stat out this morning. Like, everybody's known that's the fact, but it has not been presented in that way.
I'm going to bring in our friend Gary Sharp as well, as Sharpie joins us. Sharpie, good morning.
Let's ask him.
From Iowa, at least where I'm at. We're just remembering the Big Ten West. The ode from
Trivia
Bill
question.
Conley, the old reliable is what he titled it. But how you doing this morning? Vogues is with us. Kraynak's here. Elijah's there.
Good.
And,
this is my favorite.
You did not warn me about Iowa.
Well, see, you're in a different part of Iowa than where I grew up. You're in
exactly.
Eastern Iowa.
Yes.
Hey, Central Iowa, 515, baby. We represent. Or at least I used to until I moved to the 402.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it.
I have to bounce in 2 minutes, so I just have to start. We're just going to throw Gary on the hot seat right away. Trivia question. All right. How many winning seasons has Nebraska had as a member of specifically the Big Ten West? How many winning seasons has Nebraska had as a member of the Big Ten West specifically?
They have had 2.
Very good. Out of how many total?
We're at what, 8?
9 going into 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Had you heard it put in that way? Like, we've all heard that Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game in 6 years. Everybody's heard that. But have you actually heard it presented in the way that Brandon just dropped on us this morning, that Nebraska has 2 winning seasons in the Big Ten West in its entirety, 2 of the last 9 years?
That's frightening. That's a great stat. It's right up there with the stat of, they used to have the banners up in the championship center, and 99 would stick out as the last conference championship. Yep. Man, that stat is right up there. Another stat I stumbled on this week is that Callahan, Riley, and Frost didn't win their first game as a head coach here.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. And they didn't, and only one of them made it longer than 3 years. So you're on the clock, Matt Rule, for 54 days from now.
Yeah. Way to put it that way.
Yeah.
No, but Sharpie, a thought here with.
I don't even want to go to Minnesota now.
Wrong answer.
What's going to happen?
Hey, you know what?
Wrong answer.
So this is I think this whole season is intriguing. Brandon, when he was with me a couple of weeks ago, we were talking, and Brandon can add to this because we all like content. We all like to talk Nebraska football. We like to hear from Nebraska football players. Isn't it interesting? And this is probably a good thing and maybe intentional. You have not seen like a lot of videos. You have not seen a lot of interviews unless players have gone out. Like Gabe Ervin was in Omaha last week doing a camp. So he did a couple of interviews. But it has been
good
one of
thing to see he took a little time away from shoulder shrugs. That's good.
Yeah, he's replacing Damian Jackson as the first guy off the bus. But isn't it interesting, guys, that this has been like a super quiet offseason for players? Coaches are everywhere. We're talking recruiting. But in terms of the 23 team, have you seen guys? Have you seen any videos? Have you seen them in the stadium? Have you heard anything about them? I think it's intentional, and I think it's intriguing because we're a couple of weeks from Big Ten Media Days, and Jeff Sims has talked, twice in his career since he's been at Nebraska? Yeah. And he might be one of the guys that are there, or at least I think he will be.
I think so, too. No, I think rules kind of set the tone, fellas.
As we say goodbye to Mark. And Brandon, I guess if you got to run as well, we can say goodbye to you as well.
Vogue's is going to hang inside. We'll round table it here. But, no, I think that be seen and not heard mentality is very real for Rule. He talks about, or has talked about, the talk. He doesn't want necessarily all sorts of talk going on. He doesn't want guys that have to talk about it. He wants guys that do. And fine with me. Just get me a result if I'm a Nebraska fan, whether it's through talking or through working. Broderick Thomas was a talker, and he got a lot of results, so it can work both ways, but you need to be as good as Sandman. I hear you, though, Sharpie, with Nebraska and just kind of their manner, how they've gone about things. It's kind of quiet, either confidence or quiet work ethic, one of the two.
I think it's just intriguing. I mean, we Hail Varsity's yearbook is on the coffee table, so we've went through that to try and figure out what's going to happen this season. We've talked about it for a while now. It is the great unknown. Either that's scary or that is exciting, considering what we've had in the past around here about what we're going to be talking about. 8 Saturdays from now, we're going to be breaking down that Minnesota game. And let's be honest, we can think what's going to happen because of what Minnesota has back, what maybe Nebraska has put together. But it is like the great mystery machine when that game kicks off on that Thursday night, because even PJ Fleck will probably go, I'm not really sure what I have. How great is that?
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and I am more towards the excitement part versus the scary part, just because I think the attention to detail is going to be way greater, and it'll pay off. What do you say, Elijah?
Well,
scared or excited?
I think I got to be more excited because I haven't seen a game yet. Once I see a game, I think then I'm going to be scared. But for now, it's excitement.
Folks, do you have a blankie you're going to reach for?
No, I'm not. I'm not scared. I don't think going into this season, which feels a little bit unique on its face. When I look at Nebraska, when I look at it specifically in context of the Big Ten West, it's a jumble. Like, Wisconsin's probably a deserving favorite. You could convince me of almost anything after that. And even that is kind of trading on Luke Fickell plus Wisconsin's past more than it is looking forward for me. I think Nebraska has a coaching staff that I think is pushing a lot of the right buttons. To Gary's point about the lack of hype videos, which we all love hype videos. They're fun. Fans specifically love them. We also make too much of them, of course, because it ends up being a drink of water in the desert often. But you don't actually have control over that. And I think for me, that's where pieces come from that. So, like, you're put out a hype video, like whoever made that play made that play. Don't have that, but we do have some of these players do filter through Husker Sports Network and do their interviews. And who are those people? That stood out to me as well. You had Princewell on, true freshman, defensive end. You had John Bullock. It's the guys. They put out those tweets of the top 10%, and it's those guys. So it's not just kind of, we're not about the hype, and I think that's a key part and a really good note, Gary. But it's also this other piece of it. It's like I think they're backing up their actions that too.
No, I agree. If you listen to Matt Rule in his opening press conference and things he said along the way, everything he has said, they have followed. The way they've gone to work, the way they've recruited. And so, because we all are now asking the question, all right, why will it happen this time? And I think he's leaving breadcrumbs along the way that other coaches previously did not about, hey, this is what I want to do. And everybody can say, I want to win. Okay, but how are you going to win? Do you prepare to win? And I think this staff has done that. And so that's why, if you're looking and you go, well, when is this going to pop? Is it going to be at the end of year 1? Is it going to be year 2? Are they building to year 3? It's just a curious thing where I don't think Nebraska will get a lot of love over the next month in terms of picking, but they may surprise some people just by the way they play and the way they carry themselves. And I think that's a step in the right direction before they start, getting validated and wins start showing up on the scoreboard.
Sharpie, let's talk about that validation topic. And you go up and you win at Minnesota. That's immediate validation. There's other opportunities throughout the season to do it. But to your point a little bit earlier, that first win early in the season, or at least to start a season, evaded a lot of the previous head coaches. And I think it's all right to circle that Minnesota game as super important. You can absolutely come back from it if it doesn't go your way. But, man, for the first time in forever, what a shot in the arm it will be for the football program and this team. And, listen, the last thing you want to do is play a PJ Fleck football team in November because they get better. They get better and better and better as the year goes on. But I guess, from a strength of momentum standpoint, that first game could be really good for Nebraska. I mean, that if it shakes out well, think how this season could go. And while you've not won the big picture, if you do get that first win against Minnesota on the road, immediately you're going to have such a strong narrative towards Nebraska and just culture, the topic of culture, and seeing things pay off if you win that Thursday night.
Yeah, it's about, at some point you got to start winning. And
sure,
how you win, and then what you do with a win. Do you is it just a one-time thing, or is this building over time that is sustainable? And that's something that Mike Riley couldn't capture. That's something that Scott Frost couldn't capture. Is, does one win lead to another, and then another, and then another, or are you just living week by week? And I think that's where Rule has started to talk, and he set up his plan where one win does lead to another, and it's just consistency week after week. I think I asked yesterday on my show, guys, what are we going to be waking up 8 weeks from today, and what are we going to be talking about? Like, let's say Nebraska doesn't win, but you go, you know what? I was encouraged. There haven't been a lot of losses of late where Nebraska's lost a football game, and you're like, you know what? I'm encouraged. I can think back to the Colorado game in Frost's first game where they lost, but there were things in there that you went, man, I'm encouraged. You haven't been able to do that in a while. I think those are the things that will be different with a coaching staff and a coach that has more tread on the tires at the Division I level, is you won't be going, what was that? And just staring at the field or the screen.
And if that scenario unfolds on the Saturday after the season opener, it's not a win in the win column, maybe, but if all of us and everyone around us we're talking with is enthusiastic, that's a big win, because opening on the road in conference kind of makes that, for me at least, truly a fact-finding mission. It's like, okay, let's see what this is about. And then you go into a non-conference schedule, which I still think, like, if you came out of that feeling good about how you played, that's where Nebraska really has a chance to determine, like, how high this season has gone. I'll leave you with this and clear out for Gary. I've taken too much of his time already. But those two winning seasons, also the only 2 seasons in the Big Ten West, Nebraska went 3-0 non-conference play. It hasn't done that since 2016.
Wow.
And I mean, there were some tough games in there. Oregon comes to mind, though Nebraska did win one of those at home in 2016. But there's also a handful of G5 losses in there too that kept them from going 3-0.
That is sobering. That's like almost that's like difficult to do if you think about it in this day and age of college football. That's a great nugget, Brandon. But that kind of answers a lot of questions. If you had any questions lingering about why Nebraska has stumbled, over the last decade in their own division.
Yep, and I mean, and all those 3 non-conference games, none of them are super easy. I think, if you look at the preseason, like Louisiana Tech's probably coming in the lowest, but I think they've got some things. I think Northern Illinois is going to be a really good MAC team. Are they going to be ready to beat Nebraska? No, and then who knows with Colorado, the biggest mystery in all of college football.
Well, the nugget from earlier this week on our show was, I'm sure you guys saw this on Twitter. Do you guys see who Northern Illinois' presumed starting quarterback is going to be for this game?
Yeah.
Jamel Holloway?
Well,
close, but no.
It seems like he's been in college as long as Busta Rhymes.
Good work.
Is it still Rocky Lombardi?
It is still Rocky Lombardi.
From Michigan State.
It's so incredible to me that not only did he play Coach Frost in his first year at Nebraska, he's also playing Coach Rule in his first year at Nebraska. So Rocky Lombardi's college career outlasted Scott Frost at Nebraska.
So it's a weird it's a great story. I mean, Lombardi is, got kids and he's got a portfolio and he's got a, job in corporate America on the side.
He's got a 2-story and a minivan.
Hey, you remember, so this comes full circle. So not only did he coach or did he play against the Scott Frost team, he went head-to-head that day against Adrian Martinez. And remember the feeling of that game when Nebraska won 9-6 in the miserable conditions? That's the turning point in a season that had really not had much success up to that point. But Nebraska started to get momentum at the end of the year. Wow. How small and how wild is the world of college football?
That's about right. No, you thought it was going to be okay, and it wasn't. Vogues, we'll check in with you next week, bud. Thanks for coming on.
Sounds
Appreciate
good.
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yep. All right. I've got about 5 minutes before it's get ready for ball time. So, Sharpie, thanks for jumping on, and I want to get your take as we leave on Fitzgerald. It's been kind of an ongoing thing. We've talked a lot of projection for the Big Ten West this morning. 3 weeks out from media days as we'll be in Indy. But Pat Fitzgerald, Elijah and I spent time yesterday. We talked with Kraynak and Vogues about it. What's your take? I mean, if he gets asked to leave at the end of this year, you're just going to be sick for the guy who's turned down the NFL. He's turned down other programs, the Texases of the world, I think, at times. I mean, he's had some big names come after him. He didn't get an AD shot, and I think 2 years ago after Phillips moved on, that would have been a brilliant choice by Northwestern. Hey, Fitz, let's make you the AD in waiting. And that didn't go the way it could have. And now you've got a 2-week suspension, no pay, and then Camp Kenosha that's been vital to any good Northwestern team. That's been banned. You can't go do your old Junction Boys tribute. So now what for Northwestern and Fitz, do you think?
Well, this has the feeling of if Pat Fitzgerald is not one of ours, that he doesn't have a job. Because I looked at 2 weeks unpaid suspension. Not 1 week, 2 weeks unpaid suspension. And then you're right, the Camp Kenosha thing has been huge for Northwestern football. It's kind of been a staple of fall camp that they look forward to, and they talk about how important it is. You hope this is not the end, and it's not the way that Pat Fitzgerald's tenure at Northwestern goes out, because, man, for a guy that's got a lot of challenges for academics who you can recruit, the NIL world, the portal world, he has kept his head above water until late. They've really struggled. I mean, shouldn't they have to get back their one win from last year? Shouldn't that be part of the penalty as well? But
why not?
But they're 4-20 guys in the last 2 years, and prior to that, they had gone to Indy 2 of the 3 years. They have been sending guys to the NFL, first-round offensive linemen, but there's something not right, and it may be the simple fact that this ails a lot of coaches, longtime successful coaches, that either have a staff that those guys move on to get head coaching jobs, or they retire. And Northwestern football hasn't been the same since Mike Hankwitz retired. He was with Fitzgerald for 13 years. Yep. He was a great defensive coordinator. He was kind of that right-hand man for Fitzgerald in terms of, hey, you know what, I've been around a long time. What should we do? He retired. They just haven't been the same, especially the last 2 years. And I hope for a guy that's really good for the game of college football, this is not how it ends, but geez, it feels like it.
And Gary, could you also make the argument?
It does.
Could you make the argument that whenever you look at this suspension, could this be evidence that Fitz and the Northwestern administration aren't seeing eye to eye within the past couple seasons? Because there's always so much more going on behind the scenes in college football than you or I or the fan will ever know. And that was the first place, or maybe not the first place my mind went yesterday, but one of the places my mind went yesterday, that there could be more drama and more of these parties not seeing eye to eye than we think whenever you think about Northwestern
Cement fighting.
Fitzgerald. Yeah.
Yeah, and and that's everybody has a little bit of tit for tat here and there, but it's a new athletic director. You haven't been as successful. Remember, Northwestern can't be just chugging along like they are now because they want to redo their stadium, and they're in a fight with the neighborhood of being allowed to basically tear down Ryan Field and build a new one. And I mean, are we looking at Northwestern football with USC and UCLA coming in as a little bit shaky right now? They got this beautiful palace for facilities, but there's a lot of things they need to get this program headed back in the right direction. And you're right, Elijah. It does feel like there's some infighting, that there's more to this story than we'll ever know, that if you go sideways this year, those stories start to come out. Mm-hmm. But we'll see where Northwestern is this year because, guys, I think they're at the bottom. I think you're going to see them either 7th or 6th in a lot of preseason polls, and there's not a lot to be optimistic about at Northwestern. And not even it's Fitzgerald. When everybody expects them to be down, they'll do it. Well, we didn't expect them to be as bad as they were the last 2 years, and they've been woeful.
They've been woeful, and that's been with NFL talent. I mean, that's been with guys on their team that have been as high a draft picks as he's had. So you nailed it, Sharpie. Once Hankowitz left, it's been problematic to replace that, and I hope Northwestern and Fitz gets it figured out because if he's run out of town, he doesn't deserve that. And you taint a guy's reputation by, with the whole hazing accusations, but don't go into detail with it. That can be two ways. Work two ways. One, we want to save your reputation that you didn't know X, Y, and Z was going on, or we're going to throw out the hazing card and let folks do their own math on it and really make you look bad. So,
and the word and the key word
dirty.
You guys were talking about it earlier. The key word is hazing. I mean, we hear hazing and we go, whoa. You hear hazing younger, you hear hazing in fraternities, sororities, and that. When you hear hazing on a football team in 2023, you're like, whoa, what's going on? That was startling news yesterday.
I hear hazing, and I think my mind goes back to indoctrinating.
Yeah, and their definition of hazing in this could be different from what we just imagine hazing to be.
Right.
But it's the optics of the whole thing when you just went 1-11.
No, for sure. Sharpie, enjoy your weekend, brother. We'll get back at you next week. Thanks for taking and making time today.
Hey, I always appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Gary.
See you, man. There he is, Gary Sharp. Elijah, we'll be back at it, you and I, Tuesday, all right?
Oh, yeah, Tuesday. It is going to be Tuesday, huh?
Because I'm
you're
traveling
driving
back
on Monday. Yeah, we'll see you then.
Yeah. Hey, appreciate you tuning in. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity. Take care. Thanks again.